The 1986 Chernobyl disaster triggered the release of substantial amounts of radioactive contamination into the atmosphere in the form of both particulate and gaseous radioisotopes. As of 2021, it is the most significant unintentional release of radioactivity into the environment. According to a 2009 United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation study, the Chernobyl accident had by 2005 caused 6,100,200 mansieverts of radiation exposed to recovery workers and evacuees, 125,000 mansieverts to the populace of Ukraine and Russia, and a dose to most of the more distant European countries, amounting to 115,000 mansieverts. The same report estimated a further 25% more exposure would be received from residual radioisotopes after 2005. The total global collective dose from Chernobyl was earlier estimated in 1988 to be 600,000 mansieverts, equivalent on average to 21 additional days of world exposure to natural background stations. The inhalation dose for the public during the time of the accident and their evacuation from the area is what is now the 30-kilometer evacuation zone around the plant that has been estimated to be between 3 and 150 mansieverts. Thyroid doses for adults around Chernobyl area were estimated to be between 20 and 1,000 mansieverts, while for 1-year-old infants these estimates were higher, at 20 to 600 mansieverts. For those who left an early stage after the accident, the internal dose due to inhalation was 8 to 13 times higher than the external dose due to gamma and beta emitters. For those who remained until later, the inhalation dose was 50 to 70% higher than the dose due to external exposure. The majority of the dose was due to iodine and tellurium and rubidium isotopes. Ukraine, Belarus, and parts of Russia received substantial amounts of radiation exposure after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. But prior to the disaster, the number of children affected by thyroid cancer was relatively low globally. Every year, about 0.1 and 2.2 individuals per million of all ages under 15 years old worldwide were affected by thyroid cancer. Research has shown after the Chernobyl disaster that levels of thyroid cancer, particularly in children near the radiation exposure, has abnormally increased. Although iodine has a relatively short half-life compared to other radioactive isotopes, iodine made its way through the food chain through a milk-to-consumer pathway. 95% of iodine was ingested through milk shortly after the disaster. Communities were unaware of the contamination deposited in soil and the transforming capabilities of radiation into other food sources. Through the consumption of milk, children received abnormal amounts of radiation exposure. The high absorption rate discovered in children has also shown to be inversely proportional to age. There is a high rate of thyroid cancer among children less than 50 years old who were exposed to the radiation after the disaster, and an increasing level of dosage as age decreases. This inverse proportion could be explained by the way in which children absorb iodine. Children have smaller thyroid glands compared to adults and have a different dosage response after the ingestion of iodine. A cohort study conducted in 2013 discovered a similar trend between age and dosage response. The cohort was composed of 20,000 participants, all of which were exposed to the radiation in Belarus and reported to be under the age of 18 at the time of exposure. In nature, a large swath of pine forest killed by acute radiation was named the Red Forest. The dead pines were bulldozed and buried. Livestock were removed during the human evacuations. Elsewhere in Europe, levels of radioactivity were examined in various natural foodstocks. In both Sweden and Finland, fish in deep freshwater lakes were banned for resale, and landowners were advised to not consume certain types. Information regarding physical deformities in the plant and animal population in the areas affected by radioactive fallout requires sampling and capture, along with DNA testing of individuals to determine if abnormalities are the result of natural mutation, radiation poisoning, or exposure to other contaminants in the environment. Animals living in contaminated areas in and around Chernobyl have suffered from a variety of side effects caused by radiation. It has been found that birds living in areas with high levels of radiation have statistically significantly smaller brains, which has shown to be the deficits to viability in the wild. Invertebrate populations, including bumblebees, butterflies, grasshoppers, dragonflies, spiders, etc., significantly decreased. As of 2009, most radioactivity around Chernobyl was located in the top layer of soil, where many invertebrates live or lay their eggs. The reduced abundance of invertebrates could have negative implications for the entire ecosystem surrounding Chernobyl. Studies suggest the 30-kilometer exclusion zone surrounding the Chernobyl disaster has become a wildlife sanctuary.